Alright, here we are with Alec and Lenny again. We're going to do another board. This one's called Concha Peninsula. It's one of the boards that's on the back of our brochure. And we're going to create it right here now, and so you can see how this works. As you can see, it's one of the higher end looks. It requires 2 coats of epoxy, and I'll let these guys explain the rest to you.
Okay, so what he's going to do first is he's actually going to color, he's going to pre-color the concrete lightly. Yeah, and the reason being is when you have these cracks open up, these fissures, you don't want the concrete underneath to be stark white and showing through the board. So he's going to lightly color it. And what color is it, Alex?
It is Kodiak brown. Colors that we're going to be using here. Kodiak brown, I have actually 2 Kodiak browns. One is according to directions, it is 2 capfuls per 24 ounces. Another is a little stronger, it is 3 capfuls per 24 ounces. So, and third color is white linen, acrylic color. And we have fourth one, which I use just a little bit of this one. It is Captain Hanky. It is 4 ounces of super stain per 2 gallons, or 1 ounce per half gallon.
In water, right?
In water, yes. Correct. So, next step is we're going to mix countertop epoxy. For this board we don't need a lot. It is really thin application. So it's just clear epoxy. We're going to add a little bit of mirror or glass.
Essentially broken mirror.
Yeah, broken mirror. So we're going to put some in there.
And there's no rhyme or reason to how much. You can add as much or as little as you want. You know, you don't want to go crazy, but
yeah, more sparkly.
If you want more sparkly, you just put more. Yeah.
So that was glass, and we have brass flake, 1/8 inch, small ones. We're going to add a little bit of those two. Not too much. Just 1 scoop there. 8 ounces. That's how much I use here. And we have third one. These are bigger flakes, 25 millimeters, like flakes. So also not too much. You kind of need to find a balance. I use a chip brush and apply a really thin layer over the whole board. If you apply your epoxy too thick on a board, and later on as it dries, it is going to crack more. So these cracks are going to be wider. I personally prefer to apply really thin layers. And later you can control how much it cracks. You can always remove some of these flakes if you think you have them too many. I think we have them a little bit too many. You can always remove a few. Also, you can always add more.
Yeah, can you drizzle more glass on top of there if you like?
You can always do that. This step, and lightly go with torch over. If you're mixing your epoxy too much, it might start milking.
Yeah.
So you can always use torch just to remove some of those bubbles. Next step, we have, like I said, 3 colors: white linen, Kodiak, and Kodiak a little stronger. Captain Hanky too. So I start with white linen acrylic color.
And you want to try to be a little more organic with your application, not just splotches all over the place. Something like a real rock would, you know.
This finish is very forgiving because it's multi-layer process, so you can always, you know, add more and more. I usually start with a little bit, but then later, you know, you can always add more colors if you, like I said, it's very forgiving finish. This Kodiak brown a little stronger. You can always create like a thing. This is Captain Hanky. I apply just a little bit. One section, not everywhere, just like that. This process can be repeated many times, depending how dark and how thick you know you want your finish to turn out. In order to get these cracks later on, we will need to spray probably 2 or 3 times. In between those layers, I use a torch. This little lighter version of this finish, we will need to spray 2 more times at least in order to get this finish, this dark. So you can also wait in between spraying, maybe 5–10 minutes, and just go back and respray it.
What actually causes the fissures? Separation of the acrylics?
Wherever we apply a little thicker concentrated color, that's where it's going to crack more.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I usually spray kind of unevenly, kind of organic movement. Some area I apply a little thinner, some area I apply a little thicker, because you kind of honestly don't want, you know, to have like these cracks all over the place. You need kind of organic movement, especially on the big countertops. You know, I apply a little thinner on some areas, a little thicker on some other areas. More color you apply, more you use a torch. In about like 10 hours, you're going to have those bigger cracks.
So that's the cracks happen later on in the process?
Cracks usually start happening in about 1 hour from now.
Okay.
And about 10 hours,
Yeah, so once you're done with this coloring process, you're going to let it set, correct?
yes, correct.
You're not going to touch it, you're going to come back later.
You won't touch it till tomorrow. I would let it dry overnight. So tomorrow when it dries, it's ready for the next step, which is basically using rubbing stone, trying to smooth this board out as much as possible. And then when you apply final layer of epoxy, clear epoxy, then your countertop is going to look really smooth. But that's for basically, at this stage, you can just leave it the way it is.
Got it.
You can always come back in about like half hour if you think there are some areas you feel you want to add more color. You can always do that.
All right.
Like I said, this is just a little lighter version than this one. In order to get here, we need to come back in about half hour. Just spray one more time with the darker colors.
I think it's important to mention too that you want to make sure your table is level. Both ways, because if you don't, not only with the epoxy but with the coloring, it'll actually start to move and puddle, and you don't really want that because it'll just, all of your color will go from one end to the other end and you'll be stuck over here and it won't look good. So make sure the table is level. I mentioned before too, it's really helpful to elevate your work. This is just a sample board. If we were doing an actual job, you would have the edges need to be finished as well. So if it's elevated, the color can go and drip off rather than sticking to whatever you're putting underneath it. If you're doing it in the field, then obviously the edges are exposed anyways, but when you're doing it in shop like this, you want to make sure you elevate the work.
Always add more. Go. So when you're creating one small sample board, you kind of have much time to work on. But on a bigger countertop, basically, with application I was doing now, by the time you
just want to pour the clear coat. First, what we have to do is use a rubbing stone like this. What you need to do is take off all. When you're done with this finish, there's going to be the mica sticking up, different particles sticking up, and it's going to be really rough to the surface. To touch, I should say. So you need to take a rubbing stone and rub all that down so you have a smoother surface. You could just pour epoxy directly over it, but it would take subsequent coats in order for it to fill up enough to make it so that it's level. So you want to rub it down. And obviously we've already pre-done this one a little bit, so you may need to spend a little more time getting down some of the rough edges, but that's pretty much it. Rub it down and then go with your clear.